Hello, I'm EnterElysium, and I just wanted to talk about Space Engineers and Keen House Software, the developer, and Minor Wars 2081, which is their previous game. Now, a couple of people have mentioned to me a couple of issues with their trust in Space Engineers to deliver, and I probably should have mentioned it in the review to be well-rounded for it and to talk about it, because when you're talking about an alpha, you really are talking about a promise from a company that they will finish a game which you are paying for then, so it's basically a pre-order with some evidence that there will be a game at the end of it, and that evidence will sort of give you a hint as to the quality of the game, but of course it is an alpha and thus is only sort of vaguely like the end game. So whether the developer themselves has a history of delivering good, bad, mediocre games, etc. actually does come into it quite a lot, whether you should get the alpha, right? Make sense? Cool. But I didn't check or miss the fact that there's something a little bit off about their previous game, which I probably should have mentioned, so that's my fault there. I apologise. So, I'm just going to inform you now. Yes, Keen House Software, the developer, made Minor Wars 2081, which was billed at some point as going to be an MMO and do some sort of crazy MMO stuff, and eventually they stopped talking about it on their forums, apparently started blocking, banning, removing posts by people who were complaining about the lack of MMO feature and the number of bugs and so on there were in the game. And several people I've talked to, several other YouTubers have mentioned that it was a pretty awful game. And one issue entirely that they were banning people for was talking about DRM. Now the game, according to Keen House Software, didn't feature DRM. What it did feature was some legacy parts from the MMO nature, in that you had to sign in on launch and it had an always-on connection, so if you lost connection to the server, you couldn't play the game, as far as I understand it. Now they say that these are legacy features from the fact that there was going to be an MMO, and you would need to do this, of course, to go on an MMO, you would need to go online. However, since it wasn't an MMO, and that was in there, that seemed unnecessary DRM to a lot of people. My view is that whether it's designed or not as DRM, it does curtail your digital rights, so it is DRM. Whether you intend it to be or not, it is a form of DRM. It is functionally DRM. Whether you intended it to be a DRM is a different matter. So, to me, it's DRM. And apparently anyone complaining about the DRM or mentioning the DRM on their forums and on the Steam was banned and their post removed. Now, I've just come across several people saying on the Steam forum for Space Engineers that the company does not have a history of delivering because of the problems with Minor Wars 2081, and here are just a couple of the posts. You can see that they aren't like the most politely worded of things, but they're okay. I mean, I live on YouTube where this would be a fairly polite comment, because, you know, 80% of the comments on YouTube are shit and the other 20% are somewhat mediocre. With maybe like a small point of a percentage in there that they're actually, you know, useful. But they seem to be actually, to a certain extent, curtailing people on the Steam forum for the game, talking about their previous game, talking about they're not trusting them to live up to their expectations, which is a perfectly valid point of view, because an alpha is a promise, and how do you judge people going to fulfill their promises or not? You judge them on their past actions. So we judge a developer on its past action, we judge them on Minor Wars 2081, where it appears they may have just run out of money and stopped developing it and pushed it out the door as it was, without the MMO feature and a number of other things. Which is understandable. If you have run out of money and you get to that stage, fine, you have a game, you either push it out the door and fix bits to make it work, or you never release anything, and then the people who've already ordered it for alpha just don't get anything. It's not a nice position to be in, but it is one of these things where you look at it and you go, well, that's probably some sort of bad project management, etc. And you really have to sort of remember that next time you're looking at the devs again. Like I mentioned in my space-based DF9 review, that's by Double Fine. Double Fine have got a history of bad project management and things going hilariously over budget. That's why I recommend people wait on Space Base. Now, Space Engineers is a good game, potentially. It has a lovely physics engine at the moment. It has a lovely destruction engine at the moment. The ships look nice, the running engine looks nice. It maybe runs not great on some people's graphics cards is what I'm hearing, because, you know, I chug down to about 23 frames and I'm running a decent rig. So we're trusting there'll be optimization there maybe. But what we're really trusting in is the extra features that will make it have actual gameplay. Because at the moment you make a ship and you're like, oh, I've made a ship for myself. I could crash it. It's about one of the only things you really could do with it. So we're really trusting on these other features like resource management, weapons, multiplayer a lot. This would be a good game of multiplayer. And based on the past actions, I can't say buying it now is a good idea, because we are trusting on these features. It looks good. With these features, it would be a lot of fun. It looks like they've got enough money to go ahead with it. It has done really well. They said they've got like 10 times the number of pre-orders that they expected before they actually launched it on Steam. But there is going to be that thing in the background of they have under-delivered on a previous promise. Now, reading the post-mortem on Gama Sutra by the lead developer CEO, I actually get a little bit more worried because he doesn't put any of the blame on himself. And as a project manager and so on, as someone in charge of things or whatever, you always have to take a little bit of the blame. And the most he criticizes himself in saying is, I should have fired people sooner. Now, while that sounds like criticism of yourself, by saying, oh, I shouldn't have trusted so-and-so, or I possibly had more leniency than I should have, and stuff like that, what you're doing is saying, these people were shit. I shouldn't have trusted them so much because I'm such a caring, bleeding heart. It is a cop-out. It is one of these ways that you can say, well, I did something wrong and pretend like you're accepting blame, but really say the blame is due to someone else, and then to be like, well, it's just because I trust too much, which is just a way to garner sympathy. Now, reading that post-mortem, you look at the comments and people... Apparently, one of them is alleging that he worked for the company and he was then not paid to continue working, and then when the project sort of died a death, he wasn't paid for that period that he had to work. Which doesn't sound good. Of course, there's no verification on that. Could just be some internet troll who actually has good spelling, which is a rarity. But it did seem like they ran out of money and so on. That possibly could be the case. Now, the issue I'm having here is they're censoring bad opinion of the game based on the previous game, which I think is a legitimate form of criticism because it's a promise and you judge people based on their past actions. And the other thing is, I don't think I trust the company in general to get through to it. I think they can, I think they will, but based on their previous actions, I would say be skeptical. I like the game, I think it's got a good chance of getting in there. I think they've had enough publicity and money, and the core alpha is solid enough that they will have a chance to do it. The issue probably will be if they start going, oh, well, we've had more attention than we thought, maybe we could put all these add-ons in, this extra stuff, and then they start overreaching, which has happened with Double Fine, and it appears to have happened with Minor Wars 2081. So, I did just check the forums on Steam, and it does appear like either the mods who have been banning people and removing posts are not online at the moment, or this bad publicity that has been getting around about them getting rid of people's dissenting comments on the Steam forum has somehow changed the attitude there, because there are a couple of posts who've just popped up who have been locked rather than deleted. Now, these posts actually, they are pretty spammy and they are fairly impolite and not contributing, so the fact that they've only just locked these and left them there does show that maybe they're changing their attitude on this one, or maybe it just shows that it's a different moderator online at the moment. Either way, they do actually have the rights to ban people permanently for whatever reason they can. Steam will not overturn anyone's ban on a Steam forum from the developer. Valve have mentioned this, and at the end of the day, they have the right to do this. Whether it is morally right is a different matter. Honestly, I would say if you're looking to find if you want a game or not, don't go on a Steam forum, because the developers have power over their Steam forums, and if they want to censor stuff on there, they can. It's the long and short of it. Go on, well, you know, I'm not biased at all, but go on YouTube. Because the only problem with YouTube is that Wild Game Studios, Gary's in one incident. Anyway, so yeah, my opinion on Space Engineers is it's a good game, a lot of potential. However, there isn't a lot of gameplay at the moment, and the developer does have a verifiable history of under-delivering. Do I think it's going to have the potential to go into a full game? Yes. They've got enough money to do it. They've got enough attention. The only issue I think will be is if they try and overreach. So if you've got disposable income, then feel free to go for it if you want to. If you're hedging your bets, wait until verifiable, decent gameplay turns up, because at the moment there isn't any real gameplay. There is just building ships, fly them and crash them. They can't actually do anything other than move and die. There is no shooting, there is no resources, and there is no multiplayer, so you can't show off your ships to your friends without being like, ooh, I know, I'll fraps it and put it on YouTube. Which is a little bit of a roundabout way, rather than, you know, actually taking your friend inside the ship and being like, look, it's awesome. And also the performance isn't amazing for a lot of people. I am, of course, not one of those people, because my rig is pretty damn good. So I can't tell you what the boundary line is for who can and can't play it at the moment. But, of course, optimization is something that happens later in development, typically. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. Am I glad it exists? Yes. Very much so. So, I hope this has been enlightening. I'm sorry I didn't mention this in the main review. I missed it. And that is bad games previewing stuff, information by me. And I take full responsibility for that. And it's not because I should have fired someone or I trust too much or I'm a bleeding heart. It's because I missed that. So yeah, cool. And stay strong, everybody.